Good morning. It's about, 10 in the morning. It's 29th of October. And here, I'm feeding a friend here. Hey, you going to eat that? Hey, yeah. Is that all? Well, I fed him twice already. I feed the cats. I bring a little dispenser around and feed. I don't know if he's a stray cat, but most of the time the strays, they're pretty well taken care of here in Belarus. A lot of people do feed them. So I was in St. Vincent and the Grenadines before this, and the plight of the stray cats and dogs is very, very, very bad there. And they eventually always die, and some people even kill them just because they can. I mean, the cats, not really the dogs. I don't know. Dogs get more respect for some reason. But that's not part of the news today. I care a lot about these stray animals, like nobody asks to get born, and and when there's some sort of a life, and cats don't harm anybody. So, well, unless you got a pretty nasty character scratching up all your furniture and pooping all over where he's not supposed to, or she. Otherwise, they don't hurt anybody. So anyway, as far as the news is concerned, there is now whispers of regime change in, at least to be portrayed or perpetrated against Saudi Arabia, and of course there always has been that against Turkey. And of course they might redouble their efforts now because of this gas hub, because Turkey is going to be the new Germany as far as the recipient port of Russian gas to Europe. And nobody understands what's in Germany's head, in Olaf Scholz. And there's always been this objective of the United States to stop Nord Stream 2. And it goes back even into the Obama years, and and Biden of course said they're going to stop it no matter what. Oh yeah, we have a way. So and everybody knows that it's like Jeffrey Sachs. If you watch Jeffrey Sachs, everybody knows that it was the U.S. that blew up the pipeline, maybe in conjunction with somebody else, such as either Ukraine or Poland, or Ukraine and Poland. And some even say that even Germany was involved in this, because somebody blows up your pipeline, and actually the one who suffers the most is Germany. Germany is in really bad shape because of this, and that one branch of Nord Stream 2 that is still working, they even refuse to turn that on. So that's really suspicious stuff. And you've heard lately also that Macron and Olaf Scholz got together and they decided that U.S. are bad boys. So I can't even remember what it was about. I don't remember it because it's really useless to remember it, because that's not really the case anyway. It's just posturing, and they're not going to do anything to the U.S. Even Merkel, she didn't like Donald Trump at all, and she wasn't going too far out on that leash, to get away from the U.S. So I wonder if Merkel would have remained as chancellor if Nord Stream 2 would have come into being. And that's even possible that is part of the reason why she is no longer the chancellor. All sorts of strange happenings. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. Like in my past life, at one point, I was just a corporal at the time, but at that time I was involved in like a hospitality position, and like getting hotel rooms and the boarding for and the transportation, like air transportation and ground transportation. I'm not the one that coordinated that, but I worked in that department, and there was only just a few of us, and we worked directly for the commanding general of American forces in Germany, 4-star general, supposedly the third highest ranking general in the U.S. military. And of course, when, say, the highest ranking general, the Secretary of the General Staff, or a lot of congressmen, presidents of the United States, such as Reagan, I met Ronald Reagan, I met a few presidents of Germany, and and other politicians. I don't even know. I was not so politically active at that time, so I didn't know who a lot of these people were. I knew Jack Kemp and who he was and all that. So, I kind of had a friendship with Jack Kemp and his wife, when they came over to Germany and visited. I took Joanne Kemp on a trip to various places, to Speyer, Germany, where the Crusades were launched, back in the old days, I think around 500 AD or something. So, but anyway, that's just a past life, and I'm off on a tangent. I was mostly talking about regime change, and now there seems to be some sort of a desire to do a regime change also in Mozambique. There was some sort of a mining deal, and Mozambique decided to use Russia's assistance for, I guess it was some mining of some, I wish I would have paid more attention, but it was, but anyway, they're using Russian assistance rather than U.S. assistance, and then magically right after that, there's ISIS in Mozambique, and that just goes to show, obviously, that whoever they're calling ISIS, whether even ISIS even knows that they're ISIS, that who controls ISIS, just like the same one who controls or controlled and controls Al-Qaeda, by what other, Al-Nusra or whatever name you want to give Al-Qaeda. And I just mentioned in that last video that, the U.S., at least Hillary Clinton, has admitted that Al-Qaeda was an asset, and she did so, like I said in an audio recording, that ISIS is also an asset of the United States. So, and it really makes you wonder. You remember when Russia joined that campaign against this terrorism supposedly in Syria, and they started bombing all these convoys of trucks, tankers, going through Turkey, from the oil that ISIS was stealing from Syria. And it makes you wonder why the U.S. never did that. And why was ISIS getting stronger and stronger when only the U.S. was in there? And then immediately, 1 month after Russia joined against, on this anti-terrorism campaign, that immediately ISIS lost half of their strength within 1 month. But yet they were getting stronger and stronger when the United States was there, supposedly. And then, of course, as you remember, like, the U.S. was bombing areas, industrial areas where Al-Qaeda wasn't even within 100 miles of that, but yet they're supposed to be, hiding out in the factories of Syria. Really some nasty stuff, And like I said, I remember my days in the military and all of the inconsistencies, the things that even us in the military were told or even sometimes did, and it didn't seem to jive with being the good guys. So that's just something, it's I don't know if it's cognitive dissonance, but somehow you convince yourself that what they're telling you to do is supposed to be the right thing, and you try to put it in a perspective so that you can stomach doing things that don't seem quite right, and say, oh yes, we're doing it because of this, and it's like you can set back if you have a rational mind. Say, what? That I don't know. Then you say, oh, this is the big picture. I don't know. I can't make any examples right now, but you know what I mean, I'm sure. If anybody that's watching this probably knows, how that all works, how to get good people to do nasty things for bad purposes, or purposes of domination and profits and who knows what not. And, a lot of people like Douglas McGregor and Scott Ritter, they all know this stuff anyway. So and Jeffrey Sachs, of course. Jeffrey Sachs tries to be a little bit more gentle, but he comes right out and says the truth. Very, very artful guy. You have to watch Jeffrey Sachs. Look for him on the internet if you haven't already. Most people hadn't heard of him. I had only heard of him, but I didn't even know who he was, really. And then he came out recently and started talking, and everybody is so shocked. He's very well spoken, very brilliant guy, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. So you have to look at what he's saying. But Anyway, like these regime changes, you know that the regime change in that they want to do in Saudi Arabia is because the United States has realized now, in a very abrupt way, that they are not in total control of OPEC, and through Saudi Arabia. So that was a big slap in the face. So as you know, the United States, as it always works out, if you don't do their bidding, there's going to be regime change normally. So you got to watch your back. Hope you don't get poisoned or something. I think the first poisoning, or the first real CIA coup, I think, that I heard of, at least in my generation, was I think in 1976 in Africa. I'm not even sure what country or what leader, but at that time they used poison. They didn't use some of the other tools that they use now. So you can look that one up yourself, whatever CIA operations happened in 1976. And then you go to Mossadegh in Iran, and the same year, I guess it was Honduras, they overthrew that government. But anyway, again, these are all regime change wars, and like Tulsi Gabbard talks how sickening it is to do these regime change. And now the U.S. has so many people they have to do regime change on, not just Putin. They weren't successful in Venezuela, but you never know. You got to keep watching your back if you're these people, because they might have something going on, right at that moment. And as you all know, you're watching Joe Biden continually accusing Putin of threatening nuclear war or something like that. And of course, if you're watching news, Putin has never been threatening nuclear war, unless they've mistranslated it for you when you're watching it on television. It's the U.S. that keeps talking about war. And a lot of people say they're just setting the world up for when they're going to use a dirty bomb or something. But you'd think that that's going to be far from happening now, because it's been exposed. And it's even been exposed how they're going to do it. Ukraine apparently was going to use a dummy, or at least a copy of a Russian Iskander missile, which Ukraine does not have. And, there's something that they fabricated, they built, and then using a dirty bomb in that way. But originally I'd heard that the location is going to be Nikolaev, because like they'd evacuated a lot of citizens, which they normally never do in any time of war, which was very odd. And they also evacuated quite a few troops. And I think they moved them up forward because Russia's not that close to Nikolaev yet. But it's not only Nikolaev, but also Chernobyl. I guess that was in the plans. Russia somehow has the plans. I'll bet they have hundreds of spies all over in Ukraine. There's probably a lot of people, a lot of Ukrainians that are not, in favor of a Nazi-based world. There obviously are a lot of people that love a Nazi-based world in the Balkan states and Poland, which is very strange. That's another issue. There was a person I watched on Foreign Agent, which is the site I. Earl Grey, who's a former British military guy living in St. Petersburg, Russia, and he played a clip where there's a former high-ranking, maybe director of the Mossad, and the director was talking about Zelensky. They asked, some interviewer asked him about Zelensky, and he said, at least how it was translated, they used the word disgusting, that he's disgusting, because he's betrayed Jews. He's supposed to be a Jew, and yet he's aligned with Nazis that hate Jews. And I'm always very, very curious about that. And I don't know, I've asked that question before on some of these videos. Now, how could Jews align themselves with Nazis? A few years ago, you would never think that this is possible. Even though a lot of people say the tactics and things that Israel uses is very much like the Nazis were using in World War II. You can't really deny that. And I'm not going to be too hard on Israel, because there's a lot of good things about Israel, but there are bad things about him as well. And there's a few bad things about the Palestinians, I have to say, but most people never talk about it. Well, I'll talk about it. Okay, since you asked. It's just that I know that, like a lot of these foreigners that go to France, they say they want to breed the French into a minority, and a lot of the, I don't know if you call them Muslims or Arabs or Palestinians, they say that they want to breed the Jews, which are actually mostly Europeans. They want to breed the Europeans in Israel into a minority. So, just so you know, that they're not all the good guys either. And like I said, I don't want to demonize them either, because they have a just cause, the Palestinians. At the moment here, I'm wandering to a place, and it looks like there's a pet cemetery here. And if I can show this to you. Apparently people have buried their animals here. Cats, dogs, I don't know. So they do love their pets in Belarus. And what was it that Gandhi said is, you can tell how civilized the people are and how they treat their animals. And you go to some places and people are terrible. And I don't like to knock the runny nose. I don't like to knock the Vincentians and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because there's a lot of great things about those people too. But they're just something in the culture that they're, very many of them are not very good with their animals, and there's even campaigns in Great Britain, that talk about cruelty to animals, and it might be like that all throughout the Caribbean, but it's not that they're bad people. It's somehow in their culture. And like even Putin was talking about in Valdai, which I wanted to talk about that too, that that's this new world that he's talking about is like a hands-off. Everybody's to be independent and not to interfere in other countries' businesses. It's more like a democratic, what was it? How did he say that? Well, it's like to leave everybody alone. Like Putin does that, if you notice. He doesn't try to interfere in any country's businesses. And the United States says that Russia interfered in their election, but yet they can't ever seem to come up with any proof of that. It's anytime anything goes wrong in the U.S. and you can't, like if you lose an election, the Russians are involved. You know how that is. Putin did it somehow. Gosh, no. Putin told some joke. Let's see if I can remember how he said that in the Valdai economic conference there. He said that in Germany, some child came up to the father and said, "Daddy, why are we cold?" And the father said to the child, "Well, it's because we have to, punish the Russians for Ukraine." And I think that I'm probably missing part of that. And then the child says, "Are we Russian?" So because they're suffering. Yeah, but you'd have to watch that. And I saw that in English. I guess there are English translations around. It's really worth it. Yeah, a lot of people are saying it's a real landmark speech, just like the speech in 2007 at this Munich summit when Putin was speaking, and I believe leaders of the West were laughing at him when he was talking about the creation of a multipolar world. But it's I guess now Putin can be laughing because the multipolar world is now coming into effect, and the U.S. is losing control. That's very obvious. And if you really think about it, it's the United States and Europe becoming isolated from the rest of the world, because the world is a much bigger place, and there are far larger populations elsewhere. So you're talking about being isolated from Asia. There's probably more people in Asia than there is in the United States and Europe combined, and not to mention Africa, South America, and Russia, as well as maybe some other places in Eastern Europe, Belarus. Who knows what's going to happen in Moldova, because the people there are rebelling. So we'll see about that. Let's see, I wrote down some things here. What else am I going to say? Yeah, but as far as this nuclear, I always get off on tangents, which is good. But this nuclear threats or whatever that Putin's supposed to be making, which he's not, it makes you wonder then why is NATO conducting nuclear attack drills in Poland on the border of Belarus when Putin's the one that's supposed to be threatening using nukes. So, and then they keep saying, oh, it's ridiculous, Russia talking about a dirty bomb by the Ukrainians. Oh, it's, you know, and obviously when they're going to be doing some sort of investigations, they're going to find nothing. It's just like everything else, like the attacks on the in Zaporozhye about this nuclear power plant. The IAEA came back and said, oh, the evidence is inconclusive to find out who is shelling that nuclear power plant. You know, or like this Nord Stream 2 bombing. Sweden has already done the investigation, but and it's finished, I guess, but they're not going to tell who did it. Or this MA-18, what was this airplane that was down, Malaysian Airlines, you know, and the black box made it unfortunately into the hands of Britain, and of course they read the black box, but yet they're not disclosing on who shot that airplane down, even when the information is on that black box. And you can't make this stuff up. So Putin did it. It really makes you wonder, why don't they just say Putin did it and just not disclose the information? It's sort of like the weapons of mass destruction that George Bush was talking about, even though they never found any weapons of mass destruction. I was always wondering, why didn't they plant some fake weapons of mass destruction? You know, I guess because, like what Scott Ritter says, that all this nuclear material or whatever, it all has a footprint, and you can tell who did it just based on some of the chemical compositions, including that underneath in the Nord Stream 2, that you can find particles and you can find out who made that bomb. But it's also possible, why don't you just steal a bomb from your enemy and then use that in something? I guess if I was some nasty person, that's what I would be doing. And you would think that the USA would have already thought that one out, you know, to use maybe some unexploded munitions from Russia and put it somewhere else so that it looks like Russia did it. You know, it doesn't sound very difficult to me. According to the leader of Lugansk Republic, there are Polish soldiers fighting in Ukraine against Russia, of course, and Donetsk Republic, well, which is Russia, I guess now. The Polish soldiers have attacked the right sector soldiers, which of course are Nazis, and killed some of them. So it's like you could say infighting. But what it was all about, it was about the Ukrainian soldiers were trying to force the Polish soldiers to attack a very heavily fortified position of Russian soldiers, you know, that were, so to speak, dug in. And, you know, the chance of success was virtually nothing. So the Polish soldiers, instead of just going on this suicide mission that's not going to accomplish anything, they turned on the right sector soldiers, which I don't know if that's the soldiers that are being used to shoot people in the back that refused to go fight against the Russians or not. So that would be interesting. So, but that's just what the Russians put out, and it's probably true, because I don't know why somebody would make something like that up. Well, maybe you would. You know, I'm not them. Oh, also in that speech, that Valdai speech from Putin, I have to say that he was even hinting, which was strange to me, and I don't necessarily agree with it, he was hinting that Odessa could still remain in the hands of Ukraine if they would negotiate. But I would think that'd be a bad idea, because if you think about it, that would just set up a condition for the future where there's going to be another war, you know, because those people that live there are Russian. The only way to prevent this, and I have to, you know, have you try to recall that at what is it, some months ago, Alexander Lukashenko, leader of Belarus, had stated that at some time, I don't know if he gave a time frame, that Ukraine would form a union state with Russia. And of course, everybody would be laughing their heads off, even right now. But Lukashenko is a historian, so, and he knows how things change, so that he's no dummy. And in a case like that, Odessa could remain in the hands of Ukraine because Belarus has a union state with Russia right now, and they're becoming more and more intertwined. And if the same thing happens to Ukraine, it's not like Ukraine can possibly form any kind of an economic union with the European Union, or they couldn't go into NATO, because they would already have a union state with Russia. And that is very similar to, you could say, maybe the Union in the United States before the Civil War, or even after the Civil War, which created a union anyway, which the United States is nothing more than a union of 50 states. States, you know, we look at states, if you're born and raised in the U.S. as a different entity than a country. Like, states are actually little countries, but, you know, of course, most of the states in the USA have been losing a lot of their independence. Florida is trying to, you know, enforce the U.S. Constitution that says, yes, we have our own independent way of thinking. We have, you know, our own independence. We have a rights to decide certain things, but the only thing you can't decide is things like the highways, because they connect the states and all that. But it's just like this Roe versus Wade abortion sort of stuff, when I guess it's still up to the states to decide. So it's kind of strange that there's this big controversy in the United States, and these crazy leftist Democrats going around and saying we should have the right to kill our unborn children. You know, so I mean, it's a controversial issue anyway, but you still have the right. If it doesn't happen in your state, go to the state next door. You know, if you want to put it that way. Anyway, that's another thing. So let's see if I got everything. Oh, I was watching yesterday, and it was live. This Anika K from Poland was interviewing Scott Ritter, and you know, I always like those because, you know, Anika K is in Poland, and it's right next door, and you know, she, you know, I get to hear more about what Poland is thinking. I hear a lot of things anyway. Poland, I don't know, somebody wrote to me, and he is, of course, more on the side of the government. I can't remember his name again, starts with an M. You know, he made some good points, but as you keep watching, it's, you know, I'm not saying that what he said is not true, because it does seem to be true, that maybe they put a lot of money. Poland did very well economically in the last years, and apparently they probably did put a lot into infrastructure and all that. Which reminds me, if you look at Adolf Hitler, and I'm not trying to, well, maybe I could compare their leaders of Poland to Adolf, but not really. But he put a lot of money into infrastructure right after World War I too, and he was doing so that he could transport troops very easily, and making the roads much better, you know, to get from one point to the other using, you know, sending troops. I'm not saying Poland was doing that or is doing that, but it just reminds me of that. But this commenter on my site from Poland, you know, made a very good point that way. But it just seems more like, I don't know. There's just too much evidence against the designs of these leaders of Poland. You know, and they're frothing at the mouth. A lot of people are writing to me and saying, like, the birth certificates are not in Polish; they're in Cyrillic alphabet, meaning that they could have been from Ukraine in the first place. The leaders were born in Ukraine. I don't know. Maybe Galicia. I have no idea. But maybe they're more for Ukraine than they are for Poland. But I think Ania K was saying that they're just Polish-speaking leaders. They're not Polish, but they're Polish-speaking. You know, and that you know, that's a good statement, and that's really, I don't know. It's well said is all I could say, and it seems like there could be a lot of truth in that. So I I don't know. I agree with her. It seems that way because you look at Germany, and you think Olaf Scholz is not German. Maybe he's just German speaking because he certainly is not doing anything for Germany, unless you call collapsing it to rebuild. Build back better afterwards. That's another expression, just like what is it? You will own nothing and be happy, from the World Economic Forum. Yeah. And this new leader of the UK, this new prime minister, he's obviously a big tool of the World Economic Forum. So now you got Macron, who's a banker, and Draghi, who was a banker, but he's gone. That's a surprising change. Of course, you have Meloni, but she thinks that Russia is still the Soviet Union. So it's very strange. I think she believes it's communist. I've seen a blogger here in Belarus from Australia, and I don't want to take anything away from the guy, but he keeps talking while he's vlogging in Belarus of life in a communist country. And I'm thinking, well, is he really in Belarus? Where's he at? I don't know if he's in China and he thinks he's in Belarus or whatever, but it's a hybrid. Actually, all countries are hybrids. There is no such thing as a communist or a socialist or even a capitalist. They're all hybrids. The United States is a hybrid of a socialism too. So otherwise, you get unemployment insurance and workman's compensation and all that sort of thing. Well, guess what? That's socialist. So they're hybrids. They're all hybrids of different systems all put together. And Bismarck, of course, was the first one that did that. I think it was in the right around 1890 or something. It was called the socialist legislation because the communists were getting so popular, and he had to make some changes. So he enacted a lot of socialist legislation. You get Kindergeld and all sorts of things. But you'd have to live in Germany to know all that sort of stuff. But it's Germany. I guess they call themselves a socialist service economy. So. That capitalism, real capitalism is, if it's regulated, there's some good things, but all these systems in time, they run their course and things have to be changed. There's no perfect system, and it's not always going to last no matter what kind of system. There's going to have to be, it has to evolve, and, it's like all of a sudden corrupt people weave their way into something and destroy it from within. Like you see the United States, whatever system that is, it's run its course, and that's one reason why we're going to be having a multipolar world very soon. If it continues as it is, we're going to have the World Economic Forum, and there's going to be a 1% of billionaires, and all the rest of us are going to be poor and miserable. And they're trying to make you think that you just sit at home and you dial something on your cell phone, and they deliver food and books and clothing to you every day. And so you have to wonder, well, who's making the clothes? If you're just sitting at home and have nothing to do, somebody's got to be making this stuff. Well, guess what? You're going to be slaves, So don't even believe that stuff, thinking that you're sitting back in luxury and have all kinds of free time. There won't be any free time. We'll have miserable lives, all of us, very miserable lives, if you get the World Economic Forum to have their way. If you start and ask yourself some of these questions, and you realize that I don't know. I think most people already know that's a bunch of crap. So, well, that's about it. So, had my little walk. Like I said, I'm going to school right now, and I have to put a lot of time in studies. There's the entire class is all Chinese except for me, and the teacher, the Belarusian teacher, even speaks some Chinese, but she doesn't speak any English. So she can make some things clear to them. So I have it a little bit tougher, But when the going gets tough, I get going. So I hope, gosh, I'd hate to have to drop out or something, like get so far behind. But all of these Chinese students, and they were working with the teacher, I think, before the class even started, because they're all living in a dorm. And the girl next to me is sitting there looking in like chapter 3 or 4. And we're at the beginning of chapter 1 in the class, and she told this girl, who's supposed to be an English teacher, even though I can't understand her English, that sits next to me, to assist me somehow. And I don't know. Probably because, like I said, the teacher probably worked with them before the class. They've been here for weeks, 3 weeks before the class started. And I guess somehow maybe working with the teacher, because they all knew the teacher. She walked in and they, oh, yes, and they all know each other. So, and I don't. I just starting out, you know, cold. So, but I know some Russian too, of course, because I've been here, what is it, 9.5 months, even though, I don't know, I did learn some, so I'm not a totally blank slate, but I don't know. So anyway, I have to concentrate somewhat on my studies, so I'll be putting less time into this, but I'll try to put out some videos, maybe 1 or 2 a week, and hopefully letting you know my opinion and how some of these things relate to Belarus, even though I don't do that all the time, actually, do I? So, but okay. So that's it for right now, and yeah, till the next time.